Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 60, beginning with the sentence, but still in the practical development.
As usual, we will read the summary of the previous paragraph so that we get the continuity. So in the previous paragraph, he has said, these are my words, but I've just summarized what he has said. You won't find the text there. Although all action in the cosmos is done by the universal force, man, suffering from an ego-based sense of separation from all else, attributes his own actions, emotions and thoughts to his own free will. He thinks his personal effort is caused by his own will. The habit of separation in the multiplicity of the physical world, he carries it and prolongs it even into the higher spiritual planes of the self. All man's action is ego-based. The universal force that works everywhere, impersonally, from the inconscience of matter, the unicellular life forms, trees and plants and animals, and man, the individual man attributes all to his own will. But liberation from body, life and mind, and consequent enlightenment brings to him the knowledge that the ego is not the doer, but only an instrument of the universal forces. The universal conscious force acting in man undergoes the limitations of the body, life, mind, and becomes less effective. The individual's contribution is only his limitations and imperfections. The true power is always the divine's, but man arrogates to himself the perfection being worked out in the cosmos. He thinks that he is doing everything. The liberation of the ego comes when it realizes that its will is a tool, its wisdom, an ignorance and a childishness. Its power is an infant's groping. Its virtue is a pretentious impurity. Our so-called free will is the most pitiable subjection to any and every influence which comes from outside. Man's ego is really a toy, a slave, a puppet of many forces, other than himself. It is not he who does everything, but universal force which is doing everything him, but he thinks he is doing. The self-destruction of the ego is its salvation. It gets immortal life when it kills itself. Funnily enough, okay? In surrender, its surrender to the divine force is its fulfillment. When it says that yes, I am nothing and I am just an instrument for you, that is its salvation.
There was a question about the will that you mentioned.
The individual will is nothing but the universal force which is entering into him and is being conditioned by the limitations of the individual. It's a universal force which enters into him and conditions itself to his limitations. And he thinks that this is his will.
Yes.
This is the whole problem.
Understand. Mm-hmm.
It's like you pour a huge amount of water into a glass, but it takes the shape of the glass. It's a huge amount of water, but it takes the shape of the glass. So that's exactly what the universal force is infinite. But when it comes into the individual, it takes the form, shape, character, and color of the nature of the individual. And he thinks it is his own. Now we read the para that we have to read today. But still, in the practical development, each of the three stages has its necessity and utility and must be given its time or its place. It will not do, it cannot be safe or effective to begin with the last and highest alone. It would not be the right course either to leap prematurely from one to another. For even if from the beginning we recognize in mind and heart the Supreme, there are elements of the nature which long prevent the recognition from becoming realization. But without realization, our mental belief cannot become a dynamic reality. It is still only a figure of knowledge, not a living truth, an idea, not yet a power. And even if realization has begun, it may be dangerous to imagine or to assume too soon that we are altogether in the hands of the Supreme or are acting as his instrument. That assumption may introduce a calamitous falsity. It may produce a helpless inertia, or magnifying the movements of the ego with a divine name, it may disastrously distort and ruin the whole course of the yoga. There is a period, more or less prolonged, of internal effort and struggle in which the individual will has to reject the darkness and distortions of the lower nature and put itself resolutely or vehemently on the side of the divine light. The mental energies, the heart's emotions, the vital desires, the very physical being have to be compelled into the right attitude or trained to admit and answer to the right influences. It is only then, only when this has been truly done, that the surrender of the lower to the higher can be effected, because the sacrifice has become acceptable. So very clear what he's saying. Imagination helps, but the danger is there, that you feel that yes, I have now surrendered. So two things can happen. Either you feel that, okay, now the divine is doing everything in me, I don't need to do anything. That's the inertia. Calamitous falsity comes in. Or you realize that you are an instrument of the divine, the ego gets boosted up. Others are not an instrument, but I have become an instrument. The instrumental ego comes in. When the gross ego disappears and you realize that yes, it is a universal force which is acting in me, but I am an instrument. The others have not realized that. So, the instrumental ego comes in, and that can be equally dangerous. Ego is something very difficult to get rid of. That's what he's saying. It's 1 week since we had the last meeting, so I'm not sure of which. The three stages has its necessity. I think the three stages that he's talking about is, first is a personal effort. You try to build a connection with the divine. Your effort is absolutely essential. Okay? That effort builds a connection. And that's the first stage. The second stage is, even while your effort is on, you feel that you are being guided, that you feel that little sparks of guidance is coming from above or from inside. You feel that. So there is a double movement. You are conscious of the help coming, but your effort has to continue. And the final stage, which is very, very far away, is when you have achieved the goal and the divine is really working through you because you have become a passive instrument of the divine. But that's the last stage. Those are the three stages that he talks about earlier.
The problem that I have seen in my life amongst people is that they get a little touch of realization and then they feel they are
Yes,
freed
that's
from
right.
the ego.
That's the whole problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not the thing. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
So the three stages are absolutely essential. Now he says, Each one has to be given its place and time and due. Your effort has to be there. You can't surrender right from the beginning because you can't surrender. Your ego is there and you feel that you are the body, mind, life, you are in ignorance. How can you surrender? So you can surrender only when you have the right attitude. Okay, so each of the three stages has its necessity and utility and must be given its time or its place. It will not do, it cannot be safe or effective to begin with the last and highest alone. It would not be the right course either to leap prematurely from one to another. For even if from the beginning we recognize in mind and heart the Supreme, there are elements of the nature which long prevent the recognition from becoming the realization. So he's saying that even at the higher parts of your nature, mind and heart, the heart is the higher vital, but you have a lower vital and you have a body, which is also a big drag on you, on your progress. It pulls you down. So these two can prevent you from going further up. That's what he's saying. There are elements of the nature, lower vital and the body, which long prevent the recognition from becoming realization. I have not even mentioned the ego. The lower vital and the body and the ego. These are the elements that prevent you from going up. Okay. Which long prevent the recognition from becoming realization. But without realization, our mental belief cannot become a dynamic reality. Simply believing, yes, I know that I'm not doing, the universe is doing in me. That's only a mental idea. It's not a realization. That's what he's saying. It has become a reality to you. You must really feel that you are nothing and the universe is acting in you. But without realization, our mental belief cannot become a dynamic reality. It is still only a figure of knowledge, not a living truth. An idea, not yet a power. And even if realization has begun, it may be dangerous to imagine or to assume too soon that we are altogether in the hands of the Supreme or are acting as His instrument. In other words, you need a very, very trenchant honesty with yourself. You must recognize your own limitations and know that yes, I am still very much in the limited consciousness. So that very, very objective you have to be with yourself. Not easy. And even if realization has begun, it may be dangerous to imagine or to assume too soon that we are altogether in the hands of the Supreme or are acting as His instrument. That assumption may introduce a calamitous falsity. It may produce a helpless inertia or magnifying the movements of the ego with the divine name. Okay? So, it may disastrously distort and ruin the whole course of the yoga. There is a period, more or less prolonged, of internal effort and struggle in which the individual will has to reject the darkness and distortions of the lower nature and to put itself resolutely or vehemently on the side of the divine light. So that's interesting. It can be resolutely, a firm will but very calm and quiet, or vehemently also is possible. But over-eagerness is also can be dangerous. So you can put intensity into it, but no impatience. That's what he means by vehemently. Okay, on the side of the divine light. The physical being, the mental energies, the heart's emotions, the vital desires, the very physical being have to be compelled into the right attitude or trained to admit and answer to the right influences. It's only then, only when this has been truly done, that the surrender of the lower to the higher can be effected, because the sacrifice has become acceptable. That's what he's saying. So, you can't be in a hurry. That's what he's saying. And you have to be very, very honest with yourself.
Your mother makes a statement where she says something like, it has to be done immediately, yet we have thousands of years to do it.
Yes, that's right. There are even some stories illustrating that.
Yes.
Okay? You have to put in the effort, such an effort that I want to realize the divine tomorrow. That should be the amount of effort you put in. But your patience should be such that even if it takes 1,000 years, it doesn't matter. That's not easy. Yeah. There is a very beautiful story illustrating that. Okay? It says that there is these are all illustrations in our classics, in the classical literature. Narad is going to go to Vishnu. Narad is he is half man, he is a half man, half god. Okay? Yeah, demigod. And he is going to Vishnu. And he meets a yogi on the way. And the yogi is very serious and he asks him, oh, you are going to Vishnu? Please ask him on my behalf how long I will take to get realization. He says, yes, I'll do that. I'll ask him. And then he goes further down and he meets a poor farmer. And the farmer also asks him the same question. Please ask Vishnu how long I will take to get my realization. So he goes to Vishnu and he comes back and he first meets the yogi. And he asks him, did you ask Vishnu? He says, yes, I did ask him. So what did he say? He said that you will take 5 lives to realize the divine. My God, I have put in so much of effort and I have to still struggle for 5 lives more. How cruel is the divine? That's his reaction. And then he goes on to the farmer, the poor man, and he asks him, did you ask Vishnu about me? He says, yes, I did ask. So what did he say? He said that you will take 1,000 lives to realize the divine. And the farmer is overjoyed. So ultimately I will realize the divine. How kind he is. So there is a story that illustrates this. You must have the intensity of, I'll realize the divine tomorrow. But your patience must be such that it doesn't matter even if it takes 1,000 years. The personal will of the sadhaka has first to seize on the egoistic energies and turn them towards the light and the right. Once turned, he has still to train them to recognize that always to accept, to recognize that always to accept, always to follow that. Progressing, he learns still using the personal will, personal effort, personal energies to employ them as representatives of the higher power and in conscious obedience to the higher influence. Progressing yet farther, his will, effort, energy become no longer personal and separate, but activities of that higher power and influence at work in the individual. But there is still a sort of gulf or distance which necessitates an obscure process of transit, not always accurate, sometimes even very distorting, between the divine origin and the emerging human current. At the end of the process, with the progressive disappearance of egoism and impurity and ignorance, this last separation is removed. All in the individual becomes the divine working. So, he's saying the transition from the human to the divine is a very slow process and not necessarily very smooth. It can be up and down and it can take a long time, and for a fairly long time there is a mixture of the two.
Where does humility factor in?
Humility. Yeah, that's very necessary.
Where does it factor into this? What Sri Aurobindo is telling us.
To realize that you are nothing.
And none.
Yes.
In Savitri he says, Accept to be nothing and none.
Yeah.
Dissolve time's work.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. You have to realize that you are nothing. Compared to the universe, what are you? You are nothing, just a dot.
A dot.
The personal will of the sadhaka has first to seize on the egoistic energies and turn them towards the light and the right. So, what are the egoistic energies? Ego is there in the mind. There is also an ego in the vital, and even the body, you feel that you are separate from everybody else. It's a much more vague, but the real ego starts at the mental level, Srimdo says. Okay? But even in the animal, you will see egoistic reactions. Nah? So, even animals sometimes behave, the reactions are that of an ego. They have jealousy, okay? And they know that they are doing something wrong. They are conscious of their individuality to a certain extent. But the real ego is in the mind. Srimdo says that. And you go above the mind, no ego. You become universal. Okay, so the egoistic energies belong to all the three levels. Mental, vital, and even physical. When you are doing an action, you feel that you are doing it. The I-ness and the my-ness. Okay, so that's the egoistic energies. And turn them towards the light and the right. Once turned, he has still to train them to recognize that always. What is that? That the divine is working through you. Always to accept, always to follow that. Progressing, he learns still using the personal will, personal effort, personal energies to employ them as representatives of the higher power and in conscious obedience to the higher influence. Although your ego is there, just try imagination, as she said, is a very powerful tool. Imagine that you are being guided by and you are being manipulated and you are being actually energized by the universal force. Or you can even think of mother doing everything for you. Imagination does help. But you should be careful that imagination should not turn into, you think that it is an experience. It should not be that. Imagination can be dangerous, but it is also a very helpful thing. He has used the word mental belief. Mental belief is not realization. In the previous para, he has used the word mental belief. In conscious obedience to the higher influence. Progressing yet farther, his will, effort, energy. Okay. There is a gradation there. Will is the most intense. The effort is also will at a lesser level, I think. And finally, you have even an energy. Everything that you do without a will. You use your energy often without a will. So there is a gradation, what he is saying. Become no longer personal and separate, but activities of that higher power and influence at work in the individual. So after a progressing yet farther, you realize that all that you are doing, you are being impelled by a force outside yourself. It could be the universal force or it could be even the Divine Mother's force. Okay? At work in the individual. But there is still a sort of gulf or distance which necessitates an obscure process of transit. The changeover from the human to the divine takes a long time and it's an obscure process. Not always accurate, sometimes even very distorting between the divine origin and the emerging human current. So, even when the divine is helping you, you feel that it's your own contribution. So, that's simply saying the transit between the human and the divine takes a little time. And it's a dangerous period also. But there is still a sort of gulf or distance which necessitates an obscure process of transit, not always accurate, sometimes even very distorting, between the divine origin and the emerging human current. At the end of the process, that's very far away, at the end of the process, with the progressive disappearance of egoism and impurity and ignorance, this last separation is removed. All in the individual becomes a divine working. If you remember that after liberation, you feel yourself to be in the higher consciousness, but the body-mind life is still in the lower, and it continues with its old habits. But Srimda is talking of change of the body-mind life also. So that's why that takes a long time. So that's what he's talking about. In the other yogas, you're not bothered about the body-mind life. Your body, your mind and your life, your lower nature, you're not bothered about it. It will disappear in good time. It has no reality. My consciousness is the reality, I am satisfied. That's the usual aim in most of the yogas in India. Even now, somebody came from the Ramakrishna mission, and although he has read Srimad and he understands Srimad very well, he did say in the school that his personal aim in yoga is to get liberation. So that idea is still current in India. And that's the first step. Srimad is not saying that liberation is not valuable or that you should ignore it. No. Ignorance has to disappear, and liberation is the first step. After liberation, only Srimad yoga really starts. Change of the lower nature. And we are in the chapter, the four aids. And now he is going to discuss the Shastra. The Shastra is the scripture. You remember the four aids? The Shastra, the scripture, then the Putsaha, the personal effort of he will be discussing the personal effort also. And then there is the Guru, and then there is the time. Time is important. You have to give it sufficient time. You can't be impatient. So now he is going to discuss the Shastra. Whether it be the Bible, whether it be the Quran, whether it be the Gita or the Upanishads or anything, each one has got their own scripture. Avesta, and what is it in the Jewish religion? What is Talmud?
Talmud.
Huh?
Talmud.
Yeah, that's right. No?
Yeah.
So each religion has got its own scripture. So I read the next para. As the supreme Shastra of the integral yoga is the eternal Veda secret in the heart of every man, so its supreme guide and teacher is the inner guide, the world teacher, the Jagat Guru, secret within us. It is he who destroys our darkness by the resplendent light of his knowledge. That light becomes within us the increasing glory of his own self-revelation. He discloses progressively in us his own nature of freedom, bliss, love, power, immortal being. He sets above us his divine example as our ideal and transforms the lower existence into a reflection of that which it contemplates. By the inpouring of his own influence and presence into us, he enables the individual being to attain to identity with the universal and transcendent. He is discussing here the Guru. He has started. He has already dealt first with the Shastra, then in the 2 paragraphs that we read just now, the personal effort. Now he is discussing the Guru. Okay, who is the Guru? In the integral yoga, the Shastra is the secret knowledge within every man. It's already there. He has spoken about it as a flower, if you remember. He says, first of all, it's a bud, then it opens up. There's a root, there's a bud, and then it flowers up. The knowledge of the divine is there in every human being, hidden as a bud. Okay, so now he is talking of the world teacher. The teacher also is there within you. He is there already within you. As the supreme Shastra of the integral yoga is the eternal Veda. Veda, the knowledge. You can translate it as the knowledge. You don't need to think of it as the physical Veda. Veda, Sanskrit word means the knowledge. So, the eternal knowledge, secret in the heart of every man. Not some men. Every man. Okay? So, its supreme guide and teacher is the inner guide. The world teacher, the Jagat Guru, secret within us. He is already there within you and he is guiding you. You are not conscious of his guidance, but he is guiding you. It is he who destroys our darkness by the resplendent light of his knowledge. That light becomes within us the increasing glory of his own self-revelation. He goes on revealing his own powers within you. I think we have to make a distinction between the inner guide and the teacher, guide and teacher, and the psychic being. The psychic being is a representation of the divine, but there is the divine element also in you, in everything. There is no psychic being in a stone, but the divine presence is there. So that is there everywhere. A slight difference between the two. He sets above us, the divine presence, he sets above us his divine example as our ideal and transforms the lower existence into a reflection of that which it contemplates. So, that which you are contemplating, it transforms into that. So, whatever you are contemplating on, that you will become. The nature is built in a certain way and it will find its fruition according to your nature.
Except for the resistance of the ego.
Yes.
And the vital and the physical and
Yes,
the mental.
that's right.
But it's still going to happen.
Oh yes.
That's the
It's
key.
going to happen for everybody.
For everybody.
But at different times.
Yes.
Depending on your effort and depend how much your aspiration is there and how you open up. Okay. You remember he has used the words, your effort, he has used two words. Intensity and amplitude. Intensity is the sharpness with which you are focusing. And the amplitude is the amount of your aspiration. It's like in voltage, the voltage and the, what is it called?
Amp.
The number of amps. The quantity flowing through.
Yes.
And the intensity with which it is coming. So that's also he's using the same word. Okay, so by the inpouring of his own influence and presence into us, he enables the individual being to attain to identity with the universal and transcendent. So, the inner guide is already there within you, that's the individual. And the individual, if you open to it, it will take you to the universal first. Then it will take you to the transcendent. The three stages. The transcendent is the divine outside the universe. Then the divine is there in the universe. That's the universal aspect, the cosmic divine. And there is the individual divine. And the individual divine is already there in you, trying to help you. We are not conscious of it, but he is helping you.
Is it not the first thing that you begin to feel when you awaken is the personal?
Not necessarily.
It could be also the cosmic or the transcendent.
Yes, that's right.
Depend on where you are situated. In the mind?
Yeah, it depends
or the
upon
heart?
your individual nature.
Yes.
Okay. If you are more concentrated in the heart, you will have love and devotion for the divine, and you will realize the internal divine first. And if you are more in the your mind, like Sri Aurobindo, he realized the nirvana experience first. So that was the cosmic. Then later for him came the experience of the personal God, the love of Krishna, when Krishna manifested himself in him. So it depends on the individual. Either the heart can open or the mind can open. So, he has told you that the divine is there within everybody. So now Srimati is asking, what is his method and his system? How does he help you? Okay, so the Guru, he is talking of the Guru. He has no method and every method. We'll discuss it. His system is a natural organization of the highest processes and movements of which the nature is capable, applying themselves even to the pettiest details and to the actions the most insignificant in their appearance with as much care and thoroughness as to the greatest. They, in the end, lift all into the light and transform all. For in his yoga, there is nothing too small to be used and nothing too great to be attempted. As the servant and disciple of the master has no business with pride or egoism because all is done for him from above, so also he has no right to despond because of his personal deficiencies or the stumblings of his nature. For the force that works in him is impersonal or superpersonal and infinite. So, very interesting para where he is saying that there should be no sense of dejection and there should be no sense of
despondency.
Yeah, despondency. Because he is doing everything for you. What are you worried about? Give your power of attorney to him. It reminds me of a story of Ramakrishna. Okay, there was a man who was an actor in Calcutta. Before the cinema came, or even after the cinema came, there used to be a lot of development in the theatre field. I remember when I went, I used to think that the theatre is a hopeless thing. When the cinema is there, it's so much more beautiful. Theatre is how can it be exciting? But when I saw that, I found that really the theatre can be fantastic. It's a different form of art, but it can be very interesting. So there was this man, Girish Ghosh. Girish Ghosh was an actor, and normally it is admitted that actors and artists are not very moral in their ways. So they often take to immoral ways. But he loved Ramakrishna intensely. And he used to tell him that I love you very much, but what can you do with a fellow like me? I am such an immoral guy. I am doing everything that I should not. So Ramakrishna told him, give me your power of attorney.
Give me your power.
Power of attorney. That means to say...
Attorney.
Yeah.
Attorney.
I'll act on your behalf. Because when you give your case to a lawyer, he becomes an attorney, and you sign a paper saying that you can act on my behalf and take decisions on my behalf. Because I don't know the law. So he says, give me your power of attorney, I'll do everything for you. In fact, that's the whole thing in Mother's integral yoga also. You ask the divine to do everything for you. And that's what Mother used to do. At night, when the number of sadhaks were very much less, there at one time in the 20s, there used to be about 30 or 40 sadhaks only. At night, she used to go to each sadhak, enter into him, see his difficulty, and now his difficulty becomes her difficulty, and she knows how to deal with it. And so she does the sadhana for them. The divine does the sadhana for you if you are capable of surrendering properly to him. So your work is only to surrender. That's not easy. It sounds very easy, but surrender to the divine is not easy. So long as the ego is there, surrender is not an easy job.
So when the ego is despondent,
Yeah.
it's like the reverse of the coin.
Yeah. When the ego is responding, you feel that you are doing. But that's what Srimati is saying, that you are not doing.
Yes, yes.
Things are being done for you, so why do you respond? you must admit that yes, it will take time because I've got imperfections and he will do all in time. He can't make miracles. So, my contribution is my imperfections, but also my surrender to you. I know that I am conscious of all these things, and you can do what you think you need to do with me, but you can take your time. I remember once somebody asked Mother in the class that, Mother, when we come to you, we are afraid that we are so imperfect that all the worst possible thoughts and worst possible things come into the mind when we come to you, because you are afraid that you will see us. We try to sometimes hide. So Mother says, what could be better when you come to me with all these things? Offer them to me and I will take care of it. So there is no question of being fear. There should be no fear and there should be no despondency. Yes, I have this imperfection in me, but you take it and deal with it. But the admission that you have this imperfection should be very honest and straight. Then they'll take care of you.
But sometimes the will is against that surrender.
Yeah, that's
Very
right.
often.
The lower vital
Yes.
and the ego,
Yes.
sometimes even the mind, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, the ego in the mind also says, no,
But still one has to offer.
that's right. If you want to do the integral yoga.
Yes.
If you don't want to do the integral yoga, it's okay. You put your own effort in. That's another path. But Sri Aurobindo's path is surrender to the Mother. What is his method and his system? He has no method and every method. His system is a natural organization of the highest processes and movements of which the nature is capable. So what he means is, there is no fixed method. But he will use all methods according to the need of the individual. That's what he means. It doesn't mean that there is chaos. If you read it, you may feel that, oh, there is no method. It's not that. There is no fixed method for everybody. That's what it means. So, and he will use the method that is most suitable to the individual, which may be different for you, it may be different from X, Y, Z, it may all be different. That's why no method. And all methods. So, his system is a natural organization of the highest processes and movements of which the individual nature is capable. I added the word individual to make it clear. The individual nature, whatever you are capable of, the divine will work with that. Okay? Applying themselves even to the pettiest details and to the actions, the most insignificant in their appearance, with as much care and thoroughness as to the greatest, they in the end lift all into the light and transform all. For in his yoga, there is nothing too small to be used and nothing too great to be attempted. As the servant and disciple of the Master has no business with pride or egoism, because all is done for him from above, so also he has no right to despond because of his personal deficiencies or the stumblings of his nature. For the force that works in him is impersonal or superpersonal, depending on to whom you are opening up, and infinite. So, surrender is very important, and you must know that the divine is helping you. So, page 62,
Namaste,
the full
all. And thank you for attending. Next week, on Wednesday, we will have the Life Divine. On Friday, Essays on the Gita. And again on Saturday, the
Synthesis of yoga.
Of yoga. Thank you.